All right. We are live with Taylor
Hi.
Guitars. Andy Powers and Zach from Taylor.
Hey, guys.
What's up, guys?
Hey, welcome to the Zounds live stream.
All right. So, you guys are going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff today. We got the Earth Days coming up. Efforts in sustainability. The GT811E, which you have with you. I'm stoked. Thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming to visit.
Andy,
Yeah,
thanks for joining us. This is really cool.
Yeah, I can now that the sun's out in Chicago, I can mentally put myself in San Diego.
Yeah,
Not physically there, but mentally
here,
there.
reach your cup out. I have more.
Right, there we go. Here,
Pour the
fill me
coffee.
up, man. I've got the worst coffee in the world right now, but you know what? It's got caffeine in it, so.
I was going to say, John,
mine's actually pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
you're going to be in San Luis Obispo. You need to get on the train. Just come down to San Diego.
There we go. Yeah, I'll bring some wine.
There you go.
Wine and guitars. No, it was funny when we were talking earlier, just the similarities of winemaking and guitar building. It's one of those things where it takes a lot of technical skill as well as artistic skill. Have you been kind of dabbling a lot with new designs and stuff lately, Andy, or how have you kind of been spending your time?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. It's kind of funny because there is no. It almost feels like an unusual question, because guitars are such an immersive part of my life that there's never a moment when I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about it, always playing one, working on one, thinking about something that could turn into one. I mean, that's what I was working on just a couple of minutes ago. When I can, I try to spend some time here at the kind of Taylor Secret Shop. It's the shop behind my house. This is like the pencil line design phase, where everything is, it's trying the things that might eventually become something. And so there's always something new that's just worth trying.
Yeah, why
because
not, right?
it seems like there are just unlimited numbers of things that could be made that haven't been made yet that I'd like to try.
Yeah, I can imagine just like with the expertise of knowing, everything about guitar building, everything like that, just knowing what you can do and then knowing what you're physically able to do has got to be crazy sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, the guitar history is filled. It's like a two-way street is how you could describe it. It's this relationship between makers and players, right? So makers will build something, musician starts making this music with it, and then they come back to the maker and ask for something more. For something that encourages an expanded repertoire, expanded technique, or whatever it might be, more volume or something or other. And then a maker goes back to their workshop. They go, okay, well, let me try this and this and this. And if they're doing a good job, they're going to build something that enables a musician to do more than what they'd asked for.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite examples, look at a Stratocaster. Okay, I'm a big Stratocaster fan. You look at what Leo Fender, George Fullerton, those guys were listening to and designing for when they built a Strat. And you look at guys like Eldon Chamblin, who's playing with the Texas Playboys, playing kind of Western swing and cowboy music. That's what they had in mind. But then you fast forward 10 years and you've got Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
You go, well, that certainly isn't what Leo had in mind when he was building that thing, but I'm so glad he made what he did, because look what we get to listen to. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy to think about how that time frame, wasn't too long, in between those two different styles of guitar playing.
Yeah, and yet they're both equally viable now. So I still love Western swing music. I still love playing in those styles, but I love Hendrix's music like every guitar player. And all of those things, they're not exclusive of each other. It's just it feels like this ever broadening world of different sounds that you could make to kind of express yourself.
Yeah.
And so when I come into the workshop, I've always got an idea of what we've made, or what has been, what other people have made, what ideas used to be popular or what things people have tried. And then I imagine more what could be that doesn't exist yet. Think, well, what kinds of sounds would I want to make if I could? What would make my guitar playing life more pleasant? What would be interesting? What would expand kind of the frontier of what different sounds a guitar player would want to make? So it feels like this never-ending experience where every time you try something, it gives you 10 new ideas of things you should also try.
Yeah, there you go. Keeps you busy.
Is there anything like a teaser you got going on in the shop that, like...
Ooh, some exclusive teasers from Taylor?
I don't know. I mean,
Oh, man. There's some guitars that are... I always have like different projects at different stages. And some of them are 6 months away. And some of them are a year away. Some of them are 5 years away. Some of them might be 10 years away. They're all different kinds of things going because, you might try something. I might even build one of something and realize I have no idea how we could manufacture this at a commercial scale.
Yeah.
The idea was a good one and the resulting instrument was good, but I don't know how to manufacture this yet. We need to invent this and a thing that does this. And, I would need to invent a supply chain to supply a material like this. Okay, well, that doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means that it'll take a lot longer. There's always stuff going on.
It's interesting how much stuff you've created that has come to fruition, and we think it is something new, and we find out, well, actually, this was 5 years ago in the making, and like all those different stages. It's fascinating that you keep all these balls juggling in the air because the rubber may meet the road at some point. And it's really interesting for us. And anytime we get to hang in your shop to see the Bill Resistance 652 CE, the Rickenbacker strung 12 stringer, anything like that, it's like, this is so cool. It's a whole new expression. Something like we didn't know we needed it, but now it's here. Like, this is great.
Yeah, and I don't think of it as juggling like balls in the air because that implies that you might drop them and they break, or you break stride or something. It's more like having different things, different projects on a shelf. And kind of like the way a songwriter works, right? Or a lot of musicians will work this way. Where you have an idea, maybe it starts as a concept, you kind of sketch out a little of what you're thinking at the time. And you get to a point where you have like this thing in your hand and you turn it around and you go, yeah, kind of interesting, but I don't really know how to get from here to the next step. Because that part, I haven't thought that through yet. So I'll put it up here on the shelf. And then every once in a while, you kind of pull it back on off the shelf, dust it off, you turn it around a little more and go, yeah, put it back on the shelf.
Yeah,
and then sometimes you take it off and go, actually, this time when I pulled it off the shelf, now I had the piece that was in the right spot to go, I can move forward now. Yep. Now I know how to keep working this puzzle out. In fact, we were prior to this, we were talking about the GT guitar. And that was a lot of where that guitar came from. It's something that I've been working on for years because the initial idea was a good one. The idea of building like this kind of middle-sized guitar and basing the entire design off the string length and the set of proportions, just the physical proportions for the guitar. But I didn't really know how to get forward with the bracing architectures I had to work with right then. It's like, I built one and I knew that it wasn't going to totally do what I wanted it to do, but I hadn't yet thought of another way to get around the limitation. So, you build the one, you build two, and you go, yep, definitely a limitation right there. I don't know the way around it yet, so I'm not going to stop working on it or stop thinking about it. I'm just going to work on something else for a while. I'll come back to it.
There you go. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
No, how does that work? Like, I mean, because the whole C-class bracing thing, right? Like, is it like a Sudoku puzzle where like you're stuck, but you're going to come back to it and you're going to master it because the bass response and the sustain from that guitar, like, you can't, like, you visualize it and you play it. It's a whole, it blows your mind is how much sustain and bass response comes out of that size guitar.
Well, yeah, it's one of those scenarios where you have a limitation, and that doesn't mean that it won't ever work. It just means that you don't have the right way forward. Sometimes you have to change the rules of how something works in order to get forward. And so the basic thing that I had worked with initially was an X-Brace design for that guitar. And I knew, like, okay, well, it's a short body, even more than the width, which is still within the realm of typical for an acoustic guitar. It's not a tiny guitar. It's not a huge guitar. But if you look across the lower bout, it's, on the smaller side of average. But it's really the length of the body. The set of proportions is what changed it so much. That plus this shorter string length, which gives you a lot less tension, which gives you a lot less inertia in the string. And so you don't have as much basic energy to work with because the lack of string tension is more absorbent of what the musician is putting into it. And so it's a less efficient system if you're going to try to think of it like a computer scientist. There's less conversion of the initial musician's energy. And so that part, I didn't know how to get around that. So I just waited. And then I was in a sort of a different context, and we started working with this V-class idea. And I realized while I was developing that, here's my way forward. This is how I could get around this other problem on a different guitar. And it isn't even in the form of what we think of as V-class now, which is a very symmetrical design, but it was taking the same concepts and manipulating them into a different orientation to deliberately overcome the shorter body length and this different string length and whatnot. And so sometimes you have to just wait for the right train of thought to board at the station.
Yeah. And not force it. Like you said, if you got to shelve it, you shelve it, move on.
Yeah.
And you find the inspiration through something else, come back.
Feel the force, don't force the feel. Right?
Definitely feeling the force. But no, that's awesome. I love the idea of just, I feel like there's a ton of guitar players out there, but not as, many guitar builders. So I feel like being able to kind of, make the comparison of a guitar builder to like a songwriter. A lot of people can kind of see that. And it's like, I'm the same way. I have a notebook, filled with, one-liners,
Yeah,
or like
a great
a half
chorus,
song.
no verses, two really strong verses and a middle A.
Yep.
And the pre-chorus just doesn't exist. And
Yep.
eventually it would.
Yeah, you're on the road somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden you're, that's it, or whatever. But no,
Yeah.
I think that's super cool. Is that kind of how the you mentioned the GT811E kind of being one of those examples? When did you kind of start focusing, or I guess when did you start the design for that guitar?
Honestly, the very first one that I tried building was back in, it was like 2013, 2014, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
It was not long after the launch of the original iteration of the Grand Orchestra guitar. So whenever that was. And so I had been playing with, a real big guitar, and thought, a really cool way to go about this is I would like to think about it as if I were designing a piano instead of a guitar. Because guitars, most flat top acoustic guitars, if you're going to build it, like in the world of guitar makers, we think, how wide is the lower bout? Decide that, and then build the guitar. Well, that's not how you build a piano. You don't design it by the size of the box necessarily. You decide how long are the strings, what sort of flexing profile do I want from those strings, and then you build a box to fit those, right?
Yeah.
And so I took that same approach with this guitar and went, well, I actually want a scale length that's in between the world of like a travel guitar,
Mm-hmm.
and in between that and like a long scale, more conventional guitar. Like there's this spot in the middle that would be really enjoyable to play that not really much exists.
Yeah.
And a lot of guitar players are familiar with it. They may not realize it, but the way I arrived at this particular string length is like a lot of guitar players. Sometimes I'll drop tune E flat through E flat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you took like a typical Telecaster, which is 25.5 inch scale or Strat, or our long scale, what we call a long scale, is 25.5 inches. Pretty standard. But if you were to drop tune that, okay, so now you're E flat through E flat, string tension goes down quite a bit. But I don't necessarily I like the feel of that. I like the slinky kind of easy bending, slinky string feel, but I don't necessarily want to play E flat through E flat. So then you can put a capo at the first fret, right?
Yep.
Now you're back up to concert pitch, E through E, and you have this reduced string feel. So I thought, well, I like that feel. I like that response. I like the size. I'll build the entire guitar around that size. Huh. So that's what this scale length ultimately is like a missing fret off the design. So when you use a standard set of guitar strings, like a 12 through 53 string set, it has the same kind of tension profile that you would expect out of either a smaller string set or a drop-tuned typical guitar. But you have the more forceful inertia, the extra string weight per linear inch of string. You have the weight of a slightly larger set of strings to help you out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I've seen that. I feel like I've seen that a lot with people where you put the capo on the first fret to get that feel in the strings. But now there's a guitar that exists that way. I don't know if I've ever even thought of it, that way, which is incredible.
Well, it's a different approach, because once you go there, you realize, well, I can improve the physical balance of the instrument by moving the headstock towards the body a little bit. I can improve it by getting both my hands closer in front of me, which helps my dexterity, helps loosen your wrist a little bit. I can change the size of the body a little bit to match that, maintain a modern set of proportions to help the type of voicing that I want out of that. But it alters all kinds of different parameters. It sort of erases the existing lines, draws new ones, and gives you a new direction to go with an instrument.
That's awesome. And is that the guitar you're mostly playing right now? I know you have one with you now, but is that kind of your go-to that you're picking up?
Oh man, I have. I've been playing a prototype one that I've had in my shop for I don't know how many years now, and it's kind of come into its own. It's a really cool little guitar, but I'm in a very fortunate position where I rarely play the same thing every day.
Yeah.
So I have some guitars that are they're around. I'll play them. I've got a couple of favorites, but a lot of the guitars that I'm playing it's the most recent thing that I've tried building. And so I try to build it and then play it pretty exclusively for a little while to find out all of what it does. You can tell right within the first couple of seconds what a guitar really excels at. Like you sort of just know which direction it wants to go. But it's particularly enjoyable to start settling into it and then find out all of where it might take you, or watch the way that your own playing would develop because of that instrument. Like it's an interesting feeling to go, well, I tend to play like this until I pick up that instrument. And when I do that, it starts to drag me off in a different direction musically. Makes me sometimes I'll build a certain guitar and it'll take my listening into a different place. Where I start listening to different records of styles that I haven't explored as much, or different artists, to go, oh, that's kind of like ... and you start filling in these blanks and see where it goes.
Do you ever start off with like a design that you want to go for a certain sound out of it, and then along the way you start being like, well, I'm really kind of getting this tone out of it, or this sound out of it? Do you shift and then try and go back to that original sound, or do you just kind of go with the flow and whatever the guitar's kind of, wherever it's taking you, you go?
Well, most guitars, I'll have a pretty clear idea of what it's going to do and what I want to get out of it to begin with. So I'll think it through far enough to realize, well, here's how I'm going to build it. Here's what it's going to turn out like. Now I'm just going to go do it. So it feels like taking a piece of wood and cutting away all the things that aren't the guitar you want.
Just kind of pulling it out
right?
of the chunk of wood.
So it's like you're going to create this thing, but it really is already, it's almost like it already exists and you're just kind of making it happen,
mm-hmm.
which sounds kind of boring, but it's not, because as you go about it, it feels like it expands beyond what you imagined every time. So you start with this idea like, well, it's going to do this. And then you watch the way it sort of mushrooms out and starts to grow and spread and go, oh, but it could also, and oh, hey, now it could, it can do all of these different things. And so by the time it's done, you go, well, yeah, this is what I wanted it to be, but it's not as narrowly defined as what I had first thought. Because now I realize it could go in all of these different directions based on the musician who picked it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good example. When I was first working with the V-Class idea, I was thinking about the dynamic response of the guitar, really. You know, the length of note, the kind of the legato feel of how the notes would die away, the volume aspect of that. I wasn't really thinking about the accuracy of pitches, or what we think of as intonation.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't really on my mind until I got like halfway through building the first guitar and I went, I should have thought of this years ago. This, of course. I mean, the backstory was, for years, I'd go to set up an electric guitar. You know, you set, like if you've got a Telecaster, you set it all up, you get the frets dialed, the nuts dialed in, you get your pickup high, you get everything exactly where you want it. And then you go to set string compensation and you can get this thing on.
Yeah.
Like it's just so gloriously in tune, right? So I'd drag the strobe tuner out, get everything dialed up and go, yes, really cool. I'd build an archtop guitar, like an acoustic archtop. And I'd go through all the same work. You go to finish the thing, set it up, get the frets just right, the nut just right. You get everything exactly where you want it. You set the string compensation, and it's gloriously in tune. You know, you play like Wes Montgomery with parallel octaves everywhere, and it's just on, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'd go to do the same thing with a flat top guitar, and I'd work to the same degree of accuracy, get the frets right, nut right. I put this saddle in, same strobe tuner, same everything. And on a tuner, it would say, well, it's on, but when I play it, it's so disappointing.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, it's out a little bit.
And it frustrated me for years to go, really? I'm working to the same degree of accuracy. When I check the string compensation, I know it's on. It's there, I can see it, but when I listen to it, it's just not as accurate. What the heck? Like, I cannot figure this out. And it took me a long time to realize, oh, of course. You've got this harmonic structure that's actually influencing the frequency of the notes that I'm playing. And so when that happens, the end result isn't as accurate. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So if I construct the guitar in a way that does these other things and behaves more like kind of an amalgamation of these different instruments,
mm-hmm.
well, that problem gets better.
Yeah, there you go.
Wish I had thought of that sooner.
So it's safe to say that you're still learning.
Afternoons.
So, you know, I think, you know, in a profession or, you know, for anyone out there that just builds guitars, even if it's just for fun, I mean, the best way to learn is just to build things and have it fail and then figure out how to fix it then, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite quotes was there's a great art shop builder, Bob Benedetto. He's really, really good. Just wonderful, wonderful person,
mm-hmm.
but great builder. And he had this line. He goes, above all, we learn by doing.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah, I think you got
Simple.
it right. Yeah, you get in there and you just start doing it and you enjoy doing it. but going through the motions matters.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of pick your guys' brains about just sustainability efforts. Earth Day is coming up. I think is that the 22nd? Or am I off? But I mean, you guys definitely put a lot of value, I feel like, into creating instruments, with sustainability awareness. So, like, how passionate are you guys about that? I don't know if Zach wants to answer that, or you, Andy.
And you start. I mean, the Urban Ash story. There's so many ways you could go with this, and
I'll have a hard time starting it, actually, because it feels like a question that gets answered with a lifestyle and a textbook. It's like this. It's not a small part of what we do. It's not a small part of our business. It's not a novelty in the corner. It's not one eco-friendly guitar in a lineup of 100 guitars. It's not one little thing. It's part and parcel to every action and every part of every day of everything that we do. It's so completely foundational to what we do as guitar makers and the way that we operate. It's a theme that's woven throughout every part of our organization. So there's certainly individual wood species that we can talk about, and I'd be happy to touch on them. But the part that I think is more important is to understand that every material that we choose or we design around, we bring in to work with, every one of those materials has a story behind it. There is a story, there's research, there's work being done literally from the forest all the way to the factory to make sure that the materials that we're using are being used in a responsible, healthy, ecologically sound way that's for a benefit. I mean, kind of speaking philosophically, we want to be building instruments that benefit the musicians. We're building these instruments for the benefit of musicians. We're building them for the benefit of the folks who work at Taylor Guitars. We're building them for the benefit of people who want to sell these guitars. We're building them for the benefit of people who are supplying materials for these guitars, as well as the forests that are valued because they have value.
Yeah.
So we want to be leaving these forest resources in better condition than the way we found them. And so that means that we're going to use materials in a responsible way. We're not going to squander the resource. We're going to replant. We're going to conserve where we are able. We're going to manage any one of the different variables that we could do to leave these resources in better condition than the way we found them. And so there are a lot of times when that kind of philosophy or that belief is woven in directly into a design. Say, like with the initial edition of the GT guitar. Okay, well, that's one of the Urban Ash. We're using Urban Ash for the back and sides of that guitar. Okay, well, why? For one, I love it as a tone wood. It sounds beautiful, works wonderful, super stable, super reliable. It's great. But that was partly because we designed the guitar around that material. Why would you design a guitar around a certain material? One, it's available. Two, it's healthy and wonderful to use. So as a quick recap of what Urban Ash is, it's actually a species called chamois ash. Now, it's harvested from an urban forest. What the heck is an urban forest? Okay, well, back in the days when we used to travel on airplanes, which was, more than a year ago now, when you fly into a city, you look down out of the airplane window, you notice that it's mostly green.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trees everywhere. Every city in the world is filled with trees, and they're put there on purpose. They're put there for noise abatement. They're put there to control soil erosion, for cooling, shade value, for aesthetic value, a variety of reasons, right? And so those trees get planted, they're propagated, they're watered, they're maintained. But at a certain point, like every living thing, comes to the end of its life cycle. Maybe it either grows too large and starts to pose a threat to people, buildings, things like that. Maybe it just gets too big and that's the end of its growth cycle. Trees don't live forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so for one reason or another, they fall out over in a storm or they have to be taken out. Typically, those trees are ground up for mulch because at that point it's considered garbage and they're trying to dispose of the material as quickly as they can. Well, we would look around and start thinking, well, some of these could be built into guitars. There's great material here.
Yeah.
Why not? Why couldn't we do this? There's got to be, maybe not every tree is a guitar tree, but some of them certainly could be. So we started looking into that a number of years ago, and we, through one step at a time, we ended up partnering with a company called West Coast Arborists here in Southern California, who manages all the municipal trees. And so they were looking at these trees in the same way that we were, which is to say, it seems like there should be more value than just mulch or firewood here.
Yeah,
there's
definitely.
Some of these are just beautiful prime specimens of a saw log. Why shouldn't somebody make something cool out of this?
Yeah.
And so we started working with them to find out, you know what, we could actually make this happen. It's never as easy as we want it to be. A project like that is never as straightforward as you'd think. You come to find out, well, it actually is very expensive to do and really difficult because of all the logistics that are at play and, the cost of somebody running a saw blade through that tree and, a lot of different stories, but it's worth doing. We feel strongly that it's worth doing, and you can make amazing guitars with it. So great, let's start doing it. And so fast forward a few years, it's now a regular part of our lineup. In fact, that the Builders Edition 324, when we launched that early in 2020, that was, to our knowledge, that was the first time that a commercially available wooden product was being made with urban harvested wood. There was certainly some customized furniture and one-off custom things that individual craftsmen would do. But for a commercially available product, it's the first time that's been done, as far as we knew.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, sometimes, for me, as far as urban areas go, and I'm in Chicago, and sometimes you just have to look outside your own window and be like, hey, the perfect tone wood is right there, or where you guys are.
It might be.
Yeah. Are you guys getting most of this from like the San Diego area, or is it all kind of spread throughout Southern California?
It's spread throughout Southern California. We started with the urban ash because it was honestly, it was the easiest one to start with. Mm-hmm. It was so similar to Honduran mahogany in working characteristics, in density, hardness, dimensional stability, its ability to glue, saw, sand, like all the working characteristics were so similar to what we were already familiar with. That was a great place to start. But as a concept, there are a lot of other woods that we're exploring because it's a totally viable forestry model. Like, a lot of people don't realize this, but the Tasmanian blackwood that we've used in the 324 series guitars, or the hardwood top 300 series guitars for quite some time, a lot of that is urban harvested wood out of Northern California, because Tasmanian blackwood is not just grown there or in different parts of Australia. It grows very well in California, especially the northern parts of California. So as a forestry model, that's the bigger idea of wanting to incorporate these more ecologically healthy, more holistic approaches to forestry and incorporate those into our regular production so that we can leave things in better condition than the way we found them.
I mean, that's awesome. I love how too with you guys, there's a lot of, people could say, sustainable guitar, this one out of 100 that we have. Could be slightly a marketing ploy or whatever you want to call it. But I mean, it's not for you guys. It's you guys try to incorporate into every guitar that you guys build. So it's not just hey, we're sustainable. It's like, no, you guys are legitimately sustainable, which I think is an awesome, bar to reach for.
I appreciate that. I don't think anybody can actually achieve perfect sustainability.
Yeah.
It's a direction that we continue to go. We've been going this way for decades because we know it's the right way to go. And before that was really even a word, that was an approach that we would take. And so it's not simple, but it isn't insurmountable for us to continue going this way because it's already part of our DNA. It's already part of what we do on a day-to-day, year-to-year basis. We want to be going in a direction where we can invest in the inevitable. Like, hey, look, we can do good with the work that we're doing. I mean, the whole entire guitar industry uses a tiny fraction of a percent of the wood that's used in the world. It's such a insignificantly small quantity. It's almost laughable if you were to take into account the wide world of flooring and construction material or paper use or like all the different ways that mankind uses wood. Guitars are like a tiny little fraction of a percent, right? And yet, because so many people, listeners or players alike, can easily identify with a song, with music, with guitar playing, we get to be kind of a spokesperson for healthy forest usage.
Yeah.
So it's both a responsibility as well as this incredible gift to say, hey, you know what? There are ways that this can be done well. This can be a really healthy thing. You can plant trees. We can repopulate this. We can harvest in a really healthy way. It's great. It's an exciting future.
Yeah, I love that. Are you guys? So you have like the urban ash that you're using. Are you guys looking towards other urban areas for woods, or are you kind of just staying in the backyard of California for now?
Well, right now, because we're all supposed to stay at home, we're staying in the backyard.
No, good point.
Honestly, it's an idea that we hope can continue to spread, because if you go all the way around the world, we think of exotic woods as having to come from a faraway place. That tends to be what it turns into. So you might, here in Southern California, you might look at a eucalyptus and say, well, it's common. Well, it's common here. It's exotic in another part of the world.
Yeah.
If you were in India, you might look at a rosewood tree and we would think, oh, it's an exotic. But they would say, this is firewood. These things grow everywhere. If you're in Africa, you've got ebony trees. You go up into the mountains, you got all kinds of conifers. There's, there are called backyard exotics in everyone's backyard all around the world. So as a model, as a concept, there's a lot of future there. And in other places, other species of woods, there are other mechanisms are the better approaches. So like when we want to look at Hawaiian koa, okay, well, that's a wonderful tonewood. And that doesn't work in an urban environment. That's a completely different model, completely different forestry model. So we're approaching that in a radically different way. We've started our own tonewood company to specifically harvest koa that had been planted and left kind of unchecked in past eras, and then focusing on areas where the forests had been really decimated in order to make pasture land, grazing for cattle, ranching operations and things, and returning those closer to a native forest state. So there's all kinds of different methods and different approaches that you take based on what wood, what part of the world, what mechanisms are in place that would be viable, that could work over the time frame that a forest requires.
Nice, I love that. And you have the GT811E with you right now. Do you want to kind of put it up to the camera and kind of?
Sure.
There we go.
It's like a guitar. The camera's a little small. Maybe I can move it back a little farther so you can see more of it that way. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah.
It's like one of those very addictive feeling guitars.
Yeah.
Because it's so approachable. It's so easy to get around on. And it feels like it's punching above its weight class. Like
Okay.
it's you kind of, for something as comfortable to play and easy to play as it is, it feels like it shouldn't sound as good as it does. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't say that, but
It's
This
true.
is live. You can't edit that
It
out.
would be easy to underestimate, and then you pick it up and go, "Well, that's like a serious guitar. That's like, it's a really enjoyable thing to get around on, especially for like an electric-oriented player, where a lot of acoustic guitars you pick up, and you go, man, I want to phrase like I would on an electric guitar. And on a lot of acoustics, you won't.
Yeah.
But this one is so easy to get around on.
I mean, just the clarity and the notes are just like jumping out of that thing, even from like the, just over a live stream.
Yeah. Yeah, it's become a very enjoyable guitar to play. We're building a couple of different versions now, because aside from the Urban Ash version, which I was really excited to introduce, that has like this very kind of flamboyant, almost flamenco guitar sort of character.
Uh-huh.
With this really bright, vibrant initial attack on the note. The whole time we started building that, I had already built spruce and rosewood versions. I built these Alcoa versions. I'm like, oh man, these are just too fun. It's like the flavors are so different. The response is so different. It fits different styles of player, a different style of listening. All of these have to exist. They're like kind of too cool to not make.
Yeah.
So it's a treat to get to be building them.
Nice. So there's going to be so the Urban Ash is already out there. So the Koa is going to be another one that's coming out.
Yeah.
And then,
Oh, there's an Alcoa K21, I think we call it.
Yeah, K21E.
Yeah.
Yep.
The one is the
Alcoa.
body size. The two is hardwood top. So Alcoa is the K21.
awesome.
It's dressed up like a Koa series guitar. It's beautiful, but I think it's become my favorite Koa or favorite Alcoa guitar because of the way that thing's working. And then you have the classic high fidelity sound of a spruce rosewood. That's like the most traditional flat top guitar tone wood pairing.
Yeah.
So you have that benchmark tone wood pairing, but to hear it in this format, it's super fun. I love them.
That's awesome, man. Well, I as far as just kind of picking your brain about the woods and how you guys are kind of leading this effort in sustainability and with Urban Ashwood, and I just can't say enough good things about it, and the respect I have for your guys' company for doing those kinds of things. It's a big passion of mine to try and leave as small of a footprint as possible. And I could definitely be doing better, but I think you guys, like you said, it's a responsibility, and you guys are nailing it. So
yeah, and it's interesting to me that a lot of times people think about a guitar and go, well, you're using wood. Why don't you use composites? And that's kind of an interesting question to me, because in very few other parts of society would you look at using like a single-use plastic as environmentally responsible. It's
interesting,
right? And so a lot of the composites that would be options for building an instrument, they're super environmentally harmful. Not all of them, but many of them are pretty damaging materials. And then, you look at kind of the environmentally friendly choices of materials that you could use, and they're all the natural products. They're, the natural fibers, wood-based materials, all of those kinds of things, because you have the huge environmental benefit of planting a tree, growing the tree, the carbon sequestration, the soil improvement and conditioning, the climate stabilization factors, all these things from the tree growing. And then you get to turn it into this instrument. And an instrument is one of the few things that is a long-term durable good.
Yeah.
It's not a disposable thing. You build this guitar, come back in 100 years, it's still going to be a cool guitar.
Yeah.
It still is going to be using its purpose, or it'll still serve its musician well, or subsequent generations of musicians. And so it feels like this real privilege that we have as guitar makers to live in a space and work in a space where we can affect a lot of good. We can affect a change or affect kind of visibility of those changes and help encourage those along. So we're very privileged to get to be doing the work that we do.
Yeah, and I feel like if I always like to think this way too. I'm like, what would this thing think if it could think, And I feel like the trees are probably like, I would love to be a tailor. Especially with, like you said, trees don't live forever. And, and there's certain areas that, sometimes trees get too big and, you have to cut them down or do something with them, and I feel like as much as I love mulch, it's like, I would much rather be a guitar.
Well, it certainly sounds better as a guitar than it sounds as mulch, or even a coffee table for that matter.
Yeah, right. Definitely.
There's probably a song in there. I'd rather be maybe Simon Garfunkel already wrote it.
Yeah, right. Hey, we'll turn this into a writing workshop next time.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting too to hear Andy talk about this stuff. And I was on Primetime a couple nights ago, and someone asked, what has stayed the same at Taylor over 20 years and what has changed? And of course, on the spot, my answer was pretty lackluster. But then at 4 a.m, you wake up and you're like, I know what I want to say. I was thinking about the company is better than ever. It's grown. We're making better guitars than ever. They sound better. The sustainability efforts have grown. We have better sales leadership, HR practices, safety, everything. Everything's gotten so much better, and the company feels so much closer. The amount of improvement that we do trainings all the time and Vistage and other cool things. The company invests so much, not only in the environment and sustainability efforts and stuff, but in its people, And from the beginning, what hasn't changed is that quality people make quality guitars. We work together as a team. Jay Parkin said the word caring comes to mind. That's a good point. And to me, the word team comes to mind. It really is an amazing team with amazing leadership. And Andy has come along and just taken the guitars to a whole another level that I thought, our guitars are great. They're never going to get any better. And then Andy comes along like, they're going to get a whole lot better. It's going to blow your mind.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Hey, we need those people out there that can look at something that, most people would say has been perfected and look at it and be like, no, it could use some work. There's always things where I'm like, there's no way they're going to make, cars faster, or, computers better, or cell phones, have more features, but there's people out there. I mean,
a lot of people, well, it's tempting to think that, but then if you simply ask the question, what if?
Yeah.
What if? Like there is, it's kind of funny. It's a thing that kind of a memory that comes up often. Years and years and years ago, I was with some friends late at night at a local coffee shop up here in Carlsbad. There's this little coffee shop called Vinaka. And after a gig one night, you guys maybe you're familiar with the mandolin player, Chris Thiele. Amazing musician, right? Mm-hmm. And he grew up here in North County. And so he and a couple other friends and I were sitting at this at this table drinking coffee, and we're kind of nerding out about some stuff. And he goes, look, if you're not obsessing about something, you're probably just not into it enough.
Yeah.
I totally believe it coming from you. And second thing, you're totally right. You're totally right. It's okay for those of us who get thrilled with the act of playing a guitar or listening to a song or making something out of a piece of wood. It's totally okay to be enraptured by it.
Yeah.
And ask that question, what if, and try to push something forward. Yeah. It's wonderful. It's what puts excitement back into daily life.
Totally. No, I love that. I'm sorry, I just saw my dog walk through the background. She's like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Even better.
But man, I love it, and I always love talking to you guys and hanging out and just picking your brains about guitars in general and Taylor guitars, and it's hopefully and I know we say this all the time, but hopefully we can get together in person sometime real soon, and until then, I'm really stoked that you guys are willing to hop on these live streams with me. So
oh man, it's fun. Thanks for having us.
Andy,
totally.
Andy, thanks so much for taking the time out. I learn something every time we talk, whether virtually or in your shop. It's just always really inspirational. So thank you so much.
All right.
Cool. And thank you for anyone out there who's watching, and feel free to head to Zounds, and check out all the different Taylor guitars, Urban Ash models, GT811E. We have a link that's featured here in the stream, so feel free to go ahead and click that. And everyone have a great day, and you guys have a great day and a great weekend. So
thanks, you too.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks.